What's up, everybody? Straight Outta Fresno podcast, the very first episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. Even if you don't watch this episode in its entirety, I just appreciate the support and just tuning in just to see what it's about. This platform doesn't really exist in Fresno. I want to get down to a lot of nitty gritty topics and just kind of share a local perspective on a lot of things. This episode is, near and dear to my heart. It's all about mental health. I feel like it's a very necessary conversation that we need to have, not only in our community, but especially in the Black community as well. And I've got the perfect person to join me on this episode. Most of you guys know her as my sister, Kia Thomas. How you doing?
Hi.
Yeah. Again, thank you for tuning into this episode. I know we've had a lot of conversations, obviously, off air about mental health and stuff like that as well. It'd be nice to kind of have that conversation to be made, public a little bit as well. I think, you and I having that open and honest communication, I think can do wonders for a lot of people. People that either don't know about mental health, are going through some of these things, but can't quite, pinpoint it or verbalize it. I think it's very important. So
Yeah.
again, I just thank you for joining me on this episode.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, first and foremost, I guess we can just kind of share like our journeys and how our lives have come into play with mental health and how it's impacted us in our own lives. You're a guest, so I won't put you on the spot and make you go first. Um, I guess I'll share my journey without going into my entire life story over the span of 45 minutes or whatever.
Okay.
Um, so I know for me, I was always a shy kid growing up, super shy. It was kind of around middle school, I found myself breaking out of that shell a little bit. A lot of people that know me know that I care about other people a lot. It was kind of to the point where I was always there trying to help people with their problems, and I didn't really have anyone to reach out to and connect with. It's one of those things, okay, I can listen to 10 people's problems, but who's listening to mine? So I feel like I was taking just a lot, putting a lot on myself, just trying to be the best friend, best brother, best son, whatever the case I could be. Um, Through high school, high school went fine. I feel like I always was always going through like the traditional ups and downs of just being a teenager. Um, you know, life was good. Everything kind of started to change a little bit once I first went off to college on my own. Right after high school, I went to Menlo College in Atherton. So, 2.5 hours basically out of Fresno. First time being on my own. Didn't quite know what to expect. The first year of freshman, or first semester of freshman year was cool. It was a lot of fun. I feel like you're just caught up in just learning new things and those new experiences. That second semester, however, my roommate moved out. I had the entire dorm room to myself, and I don't know what it was, but I just battled with just a lot. I don't know if it was in correlation with me being homesick, because I was missing Fresno, and missing, friends and family here. I don't know if it was that, but there were periods of times like I would go like a week straight, without actually being seen. I wasn't showing up to class. Fortunately, those classes weren't saying, you had to be in class every day or it was graded or whatever. So I wasn't showing up to class. I was just doing my homework, locked alone in my dorm, wasn't hanging out with people. Um, I'd go sometimes 2 days in a row, without actually sleeping. So, it was just bad and I couldn't quite pinpoint it. I figured it was just me being homesick. I always tried to attribute it to other things. Um, I found myself moving back to Fresno, kind of had some new goals. And I think at that time I had like this, like a new pep in my step. But even then that started to eventually fade away. Um, got blessed to meet Steph, and become my girlfriend at the time, and obviously eventually my wife now. Um, but throughout that time, so we're talking pretty much like 2011 to now, just a lot of things changed, and I couldn't really figure it out. I always figured I was just like, in a funk, and I would get out of that funk at some point. Um, but it never quite came. I just go through these long bouts of just, feeling hopeless and feeling like, why am I even doing this? going to city, I'm taking classes, and the first time adversity strikes, oh well, let me drop the class, or it's all downhill from here. And I just found myself not doing as well in classes as I could have. Even if I was passing the class, that was fine, but I was passing it with a C when I easily could have gotten an A in that course. Just things like that, and eventually it got to the point where that was impacting my relationship, that was impacting me reaching out to people or staying in contact with people. I would go a long time with just not responding to texts and calls and things like that. I'm still like that kind of to this day. I get in those kind of times where just like, I don't even want to take that on right now. But I was just doing a lot of that. I would just fall off the grid, like immediately. Um, so fast forward to pretty much 2017, shortly just after I got married, I was kind of just acting in ways that I wasn't proud of, and it kind of resulted in like a breaking point in my marriage. And Steph was kind of like, let's look into this, let's figure out what's going on. Um, Started going, seeking a mental health and doing testing and things like that. And I was actually diagnosed with depression in May of 2018. So we're going on just under 2 years now. Um, didn't know what that meant, at all really. I found myself being open to things, but I just didn't know what to expect or what that really meant for my life. Is this a permanent thing that I'm dealing with? Will this go away in a year? I just didn't quite know. Um, so that kind of leads up to today where, hey, I have a diagnosis. Um, a lot of things that you deal with depression, you're talking obviously depressed mood, mood swings, a lot of feelings of hopelessness and things like that. Fortunately, I've never really been like in the mindset where I've actually thought about taking my own life. I know a lot of people get to that point, but I've never gotten to that point, fortunately. But just a lot of things that it deals with. I kind of tell Steph sometimes I physically hurt getting out of the bed. It has so many, physiological effects as well, just your mindset. And we can kind of get into, depression and the misnomers and stuff a little bit
Mhm.
later as well. But that's kind of my journey in a nutshell. And that's, where I'm at. I haven't really, up, up until maybe about, I guess, a few months ago, I hadn't really shared, that story with anyone. I kind of posted it on Facebook because I just really, really needed to get it off my chest. After everything regarding Taylor passing away, it just really brought everything to the forefront and felt like I needed to be open and honest about it. Um, and really, that's part of the reason that's inspired this whole entire podcast. That was kind of just like the straw that broke the camel's back. And it's like, I really, really need to, present a platform or something like this and try to promote some healing and some learning and understanding as well. So that's my journey in a nutshell. So what about you, Kia?
So I've never heard your full story, although I've known you your entire life. So it's what's really interesting is that a lot of your beginning until you're like until 2017 or your breaking, not your breaking point, but your awakening as far as what was going on, our stories are very similar. And that's so interesting to me. I was also the shy kid. I kept my head down to try and stay out of sight. If nobody sees me, I'm not doing wrong. I'm not, you know what I mean? So it's like, no, I have to be perfect. I have to do the right thing. I always have to be on the up and up. So that way I kind of fly under the radar. Nobody's going to bother you if you're not causing issues.
Right.
And so that was kind of my thought process. But that was it. Did that all the way up until high school. Um, in high school is when things kind of just went crazy for me. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it was probably around my sophomore year. I was just always sad and I couldn't pinpoint it. I didn't know why. I almost got kicked out of school because my GPA was so low. Um, and it was just like I had no idea what was going on with me. And so it was weird. I mean, from suicidal thoughts to thinking I could take my life by taking a whole bunch of Tylenol and then going to sleep, attempting that. So, I mean, and then just, going away to college and, oh, I'm finally going to live my dream. And then Hurricane Katrina hits and sends me right back home in a few weeks. And then just that trauma in itself of being involved in a hurricane, seeing it happen, seeing the aftermath of it, being concerned about when you're going to be able to talk to your family again. Does anybody know that we're here? There are just so many emotions that I went through as this 18-year-old, first time away from home, really not only just in the same state, but I'm literally across the United States, basically, with no immediate help there. So that was a lot in itself. Then to come back home to Fresno, and I mean, I had my boyfriend at the time. I was trying to do school, but I was trying to make life happen as normal. And clearly I was not ready for it to happen as normal. Ended up failing out of school, got pregnant. It was just a whole bunch of different things going on at that time. And just kind of struggling to find where I fit because I had flown under the radar for so long that it was hard identifying who I really was. And that took even years after that to happen. As far as my mental health awakening, I didn't even really know it was a thing until about 2017, just the same as you, I think. And then at that point, it was, you know what, I need to talk to somebody. Because just like you had mentioned as well, I was always that person. And still today, I think I still am that person that people feel they can talk to about their issues, but I don't want to be a burden. So I don't want to dump on other people. And so it's like, nope, I'll keep it to myself. Nope, I'll keep it to myself. But thankfully, I'm so thankful that God has really surrounded me with people that know me enough to say, Kia, you're quiet, what's wrong? To where they're like, no, tell me what's wrong. And so I'm so thankful that I have this little circle of friends now that really know me enough to know when I'm in those funks. It even it had to be 2017 as well. A friend of mine was visiting from out of town, and she came to my place and she was just like, Kia, what's wrong? And I was like, what do you mean? It's just messy. She was like, no, this is not you. What's wrong? Are you depressed? And that was kind of like could that happen to me? Like, can I be depressed? What does that mean? Like, I didn't even really know what it was. And so after that, it was just like, I need to pay attention to some things that I have not been paying attention to, like just from my mood. Then, like, I want to say maybe 2018, I went through this spell where I was just angry all the time. And I didn't know why I was angry. And I was taking it out on the girls and I'm fussing at them all the time. So that was like creating this hostile home for us. And it just really didn't even make sense why it was like that. It's like, well, is your life is okay? Why are you so angry? And I just couldn't pinpoint it. So to this day or now, I've gone to counseling a couple of times. I have not been diagnosed with anything, simply because I haven't gone to a specific medical professional, I guess I would say. I've been to counseling with therapists, but I have not actually said, okay, this is what you need medication or anything like that. But the tools that they provided to me were enough for me to get out of that funk and to realize when I'm in a situation, like, okay, I need to step back. I need to do this, or even incorporating my diet into it. What have I been eating? Because this is really causing me to not feel my best and things like that. So that's kind of where that leads me to today. At this point, I'm very cognizant of, have we been eating out a lot? Oh, that's why I don't feel so great. That's why my mind is foggy. Have I been drinking enough water? Have I been going outside enough? Have I opened the curtains with this whole COVID stuff? The first maybe 2 weeks or so was just like, what is going on? Like, I'm talking like I'm panicking, and I'm usually like a chill person. I don't like to panic, just because what does panicking do? Nothing. So,
Mm-hmm.
other than cloud your judgment. But when I say I was panicking, I was panicking. Like, I'm telling my boss, hey, my coworker has been out. She could potentially have it. I don't want to be here when she gets back, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those, and it's just like, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, yeah, that was really kind of irrational thoughts, but that was where I was at that moment. And even the first couple of weeks of being able to work from home, I barely got any work done because my mind was just stuck on what is going on right now. I am so scared. I don't know what to do. Like, my finances aren't completely in order to be able to handle this right now. Like,
Right.
what's going to happen next? And like, yeah, and praying didn't pray it away. I had to, like, you know what I mean? And so it's just like, not only was I praying, but I also had to get up and move. I had to get up out of the bed. I had to open the windows. I had to get some sun in the house. I had to turn the TV off. I had to go for a walk. I had to make sure I was drinking water. I had to, things like that. So that's kind of where I am now. And thankfully, like, there's that little roller coaster of grief type of thing. That was literally like a grief thing. And I can say that I'm now on the other side. But initially going down, it was just like, this is going to be really bad. I didn't
Yeah.
want to interact with my kids. You guys leave me alone. My door is closed, that type of thing. And as I've gone through this journey of being cognizant of mental health, it's like, how is my mental health affecting my children? Because they don't
Hmm.
necessarily understand what's going on in my head. And so I've really tried to be very transparent with them and, sit down and say, okay, you guys, if I say I need a break, I need you to give me that break. I don't want to go off on you. I don't want to fuss at you for no reason. So I need you to do this for me. When I say I need space, I need you to give me space. I'm working through some things. I need time to get through it mentally, and then we can interact and be on a good page. And so just really being open with them about that as well has been very critical, because I don't want them to go down the same cycle that I went down because nobody talked about it. I want them to
Right.
be able to talk to me if they're about their feelings, about where, well, mom, I had a thought about whatever. Okay, let's talk about it. I don't want them to think that they're in anything alone. And so I think that's one of the keys, as far as where I am today.
Yeah. And what I find crazy is that we both shared our stories. We've lived in the same household, for years, but we didn't know each other's stories. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we maybe knew bits and pieces and stuff like that, but in real time, like the stuff you were going through in high school, when I was in middle school, I had no clue. I had
Mm-hmm.
no clue any of that was going on. I don't know if we just didn't feel, and I think part of that was we didn't feel comfortable talking to that about each other. Not, due to our, the closeness or whatever the case is, because we've been relatively close throughout the years, but it's just, I don't even know how to explain what's going on. If I share this story with my sister, does she now think that I'm crazy? Is she like, no, he needs to go to therapy, he needs this, he needs that?
Right.
It is a little bit of a sense of fear.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't gonna tell, our mom that. I wasn't gonna tell, my dad that. I'm not gonna tell my friends. I didn't want anybody to think that was crazy. I just figured, hey, this is some sort of funk. I'll get out of it. Then before you know it, I'll never remember that point again. But
Mm-hmm.
that turnaround never came, and I
Right.
think that's when it was like, and I didn't even fully quite acknowledge it. It was more so, my wife that
Mm-hmm.
acknowledged it and was like, no, 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 this isn't right. This isn't even the person that I marry. What is going on?
Right.
So, I mean, I think that's the crazy thing, is that we don't talk about it. You can have people that say, hey, I'm there for you when I need you, but when you're going through those things, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like, whatever's in my mind at that time, it's like, you're not here for me. No one is here for me. So it's to the point where regardless of what you say to me, it doesn't matter, because what's in my mind is the truth. And it is ultimately your mind playing tricks on you, but it's so hard. I mean, it's
Yeah.
super hard.
Yeah. It's like my perception is the only reality. And
Hmm.
so, and that's such a dangerous place, because your perception can be altered, it can be skewed. Something negative may have happened, but that's not the full scope of the reality. And so I think a lot of times, um, we focus on little minute things. And that was one of the things that I learned, in counseling as well, is just, we're focusing on this little thing, but what is this? What does this look like? You know what I mean? And it's just like,
Hmm.
wait a second, let me take a step back and think about the bigger picture. This is a small thing compared to why I'm here. and not even just why I'm here, but why I'm doing this. Or one of the triggers that led me to counseling the second time around was work. I was
Mm-hmm.
extremely stressed at work, from coworkers, and just not feeling heard, feeling like my concerns were invalid, feeling like, being in an environment where I'm the youngest, a woman of color, and to as of today, I don't have a degree, so I'm looked at as uneducated. Although I know a lot, I'm looked at it as
Right.
uneducated. You know what I mean? A single mom. Everybody knows I'm a single mom. So what does that mean? She's irresponsible, And so
Mm-hmm.
in the grand scheme of things, it's just like, well, if I'm voicing my concerns to you and you're not responding to, it's like, well, I'm nothing,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have the accolades that you have, because I'm not at the level that you have, because I'm in a position, I'm in a supervisor position to someone who's older than me. I'm invalid because I don't have the age on me to, state that I can tell you that this is wrong or this needs to be done. And so just all of that together is just hard, because there's nothing I can do to change that.
Right.
There's
Right. Yeah. No.
absolutely nothing I can do to change that. So it just becomes like, but then at the same time, it's that little thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
now look where we are. And in the grand scheme of things, I'm at this job because it's paying my tuition so I can finish college.
Right.
So, and I'll be finishing next year. So it's just like the grand scheme of things, I'm here to graduate. I'm here to pay my bills and graduate. Boom. Like,
Yeah.
let me refocus on the bigger picture here. It's not my coworker that I'm here for. I'm here to do my job, pay my bills, and get my tuition paid for.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just refocusing our thought process on the bigger picture and not just those small moments is just eye-opening in itself and helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel you on those small moments, especially at work, because right now is even a tough time. I work in HR for my department, and we're dealing with Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and there's like all this paperwork and all this extra stuff that needs to be done right now. We're kind of short staffed. We had a lot of new people, in our unit. I was used to how it was, kind of had strong, trust and things like that, and we just worked efficiently as a group. Um, but now I kind of felt like, well, I'm the elder statesman now. I can't push my work off to anyone else because they can't do it. I can't train someone else to do it right now. I don't have time. So I just found myself just constantly taking everything. And on top of that, employees are coming directly to me because they know that I help them out. So it's
Right.
just like I'm just taking on so much. And I'm just kind of like asking my supervisor, like, hey, well, just kind of let me be right now. There's nothing you can do to help me. Just let me be.
Mm-hmm.
But then you start to think about, well, do I even want to be at this job anymore? Do I even trust this team?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to transfer right now, and all this stuff, like all that stuff starts to go in my head, and it's just like, okay, well, let's take a step back. Let's, refresh. The whole issue of working at home and stuff like that. I didn't really think that was going to be, feasible for me. But yet working in that environment, going into the environment, even if only 5 people are at work, it's just like, it just immediately, wears you down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I feel you on all that 100%. Um, I guess my next question for you would be, you started to talk about, how you communicate openly, with the girls, with your twin daughters. My nieces, love my nieces. So they are about to be teenagers.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not looking forward to it at
No,
all.
me neither.
I mean, I guess they've been like teenagers since they were like 10. So Um, but you talked about having like conversations with them, and what are some of the things that you do to like make sure that they're in a time of where it's like heavy bullying and stuff like that? How do you like keep an eye on them, and how do you have conversations with them to ensure that, or try to hope that they're not going down those paths of depression and anxiety, anything like that?
Well, thankfully, they're really open with me. I think just kind of the way that we've always had our relationship. We've lived in very tight quarters for several years, so
Right.
there's automatic closeness that develops because of that, and thankfully, we still have that to a certain degree. So in the car coming home from practice, hey, they'll and A lot of it is unprompted, which I totally appreciate because I'm like that awkward person to talk to where it's just kind of like, so do you like bread? Me too. Like,
Right.
and so thankfully they're much more open and they'll be like, Mom, this happened at school today. And then gives me an opportunity to give my 2 cents. And I guess to my surprise, they listen a lot. They listen a lot, especially when I give advice. Like, hey, try this. Approach your friend like this. Maybe you should go to them and say this, and then try saying this and see what happens. And they'll come back, Mom, that worked. I tried it and it worked. And it's like, okay, cool. Now, y'all listening? Okay, I feel you. But it's just so I'm thankful for who they are as people. They're just so talkative in themselves, because otherwise I don't know if we would necessarily have that same dialogue spontaneously. It would kind of have to be a, hey guys, let's have a talk, let's sit down and
Hmm.
have a chat, versus we're at the grocery store and their mom, and then so and so said this, and then so and so did this, and then it's like, okay, well, what did you do? How did you respond to that? How would you have felt? Well, so and so said this to me. Okay, how did you respond? How did you feel about that? And so,
Hmm.
and then I'm able to give them feedback on, if I've been in that situation before, well, this is what I did, or this happened to me too, and this is what ended up happening at the end of it. So it's just perfect opportunities to share, because honestly, a lot of times we're in the places and the spaces that we're in because we're not being transparent with one another. We lived in the same house and we had no idea that we were both going
Right.
through the same thing. So it's just not assuming that anyone knows or that they don't care about what's going on with you, and just sharing and
Hmm.
just sharing. And I think it is so beneficial to share mental health history with our children, as far as the lineage in our family. Well, so and so did suffer from mental illness. There's so much research to show that it's genetic. So why are we
Hmm.
not talking about this? Great great grandma was admitted to a hospital. Why aren't we
Right.
sharing this? Because then it's like you have those situations where they're potentially going through teen years, and a lot of teens deal with depression and thoughts of suicide, because and it's twofold. It is stressful being a teen because you always think people are looking at you. Ain't nobody looking at you, for one. But for two, it's just like, so you think that you're this big world in, this big universe, but in reality, you're a little star. And so
Hmm.
you think that people are focusing on you, but they're not. And so you're under pressure to always be great because people are looking at you. And while that's not, being great is not a bad trait to have, but it puts a lot of pressure on you. It's very stressful because we're human and we're going to mess up.
Hmm.
So I think that just being honest, not only with them about my struggles, but being open to listening to their struggles and giving them positive feedback about it. Um, and then also telling them about our history, where our family comes from, and not, keeping those secrets under the rug. And I think that as the Black community, we have that so big, like, from just random things. So and so has 8 kids at a wedlock with so and so. You know what I mean? Like stuff like
Yeah.
that, or just random things. But it's like, why aren't we talking about these things? Like, why are we so ashamed of what the truth?
Right.
Why are you
It
ashamed of the truth?
it's almost like when it comes to the truth, we treat it more like, it's like the tea, who no, you don't want to spill that tea, about the family or whatever the case is. But I feel like it doesn't have to be approached that way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that people may gossip or whatever about it after they hear it, but at the same time, what instead of that truth just, hurting the people that, were affected, I guess, whenever it happened, um, why not limit, that harm to future generations and divulge that information? It's not going to make me look at, my ancestors, a different way now because I know, oh, okay, well, they did that, that, and that because, they were depressed or they had anxiety, whatever. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
care about that. But okay, what can I do to address it in my own life? Oh, wait, I know someone that has been feeling that way in my family. Let me go to them and maybe we can connect. And help myself, help each other, help, the future generations as well. I mean, my son is only almost 10 months, so I don't have to have those conversations yet. But Steph and I have talked about it just from my own journey. It's like, we're definitely going to have those conversations with them. We're definitely going to, keep an eye on that because we know that there's a history now. And now, obviously, our generational tree is very close, with me going through those things. So
Yeah.
it makes him likely to, or more likely, I should say, to go through those same issues as well. So I definitely want to have those conversations with him. I'm not going to, budge from that one bit because all it takes is, that simple, oh, well, it's just this, maybe it's that, maybe it's that, that could be all the time that someone needs to have their mind made up about taking their own life or going down some sort of tragic path. So I don't want to hesitate on that at all. So I'm definitely glad that you brought that up. I guess we can kind of go into the stigma in the Black community around mental health. For you in your journey, had you really shared that with anyone before this?
No.
Oh,
No, it's especially about my high school experiences and contemplating and attempting suicide. That I've never shared that with anybody. I've kind of talked about it briefly with the girls, not to that full extent, but yeah.
mhm. Yeah. I had, like I said, I hadn't really shared it with anyone up until I posted on Facebook several months ago, which kind of prompted the launching of this podcast. So we're talking back in December, I believe it was, is when December 2019 is kind of when I divulged, my journey and everything I've been going through. Um, but it kind of needed to be done. I hate the circumstances that I had to divulge it under. I mean, obviously with another tragic loss, and it just really, it really weighed on me because, um, Taylor was just a tremendous person. We all kind of knew how Taylor was and knew that she got anxious about, some smaller things, but none of us realized that it was to that point.
Mhm.
Um, so it hit, the entire family, like a rock. And I kind of realized, you know what? Well, maybe I need to step up so that people can realize it's not as far away from you as you think.
Yeah.
Um, and it could be anyone. When I'm around people, I'm talking, I'm laughing and all that stuff. But then there are a lot of times where I'm very withdrawn. I'm very short, and things like that. It's like, this is kind of what it is. I'm not necessarily intentionally like I'm mad at you or anything like that, but it's just sometimes you can wake up and it's just like, nah, today's not the day. I can't quite break out of it, but it's kind of what it is. I'm glad I have, my son, I have my wife, where I can just enjoy being around the family, but there are times that I'm a little more withdrawn and I'm kind of just looking to have like moments to myself because I don't really get those throughout the day. You work 8 hours a day, then you come home, then you're with the family for the rest of the night.
Yeah.
So when they go to sleep, sometimes I stay up. I'll stay up for 4 or 5 hours just to be in my own thoughts, which is sometimes good and bad.
Right.
Because sometimes you have those negative thoughts swirling and they just consume you. And now before you know it, you can't sleep well and things like that, or you stay up all night, whatever. Um, but I think going back to that whole stigma in the Black community, I think it is the fact of no one wants to feel like they're crazy. No one wants to, we always want to make it seem like we're normal. We don't want to have any added attention brought to us for things like that. Um, you get a reputation for things like that. Oh, well, so and so did this, and this because they're crazy and da da da. Like, nobody wants that. So I think part of that, we can all pinpoint it. I think when people are going through through things like depression and anxiety, we notice the cues, but
Yeah.
we just still don't speak on it. Um, I don't know if it's because we fear having those open and honest conversations with others. I think that may be part of it.
Mhm.
Um, but it's just much easier just to avoid it than to bring it to the forefront and actually, you know, you're not, when you're talking to someone and having these conversations, you're not necessarily like, being forceful, but it's just you don't realize how that little conversation can change their whole perspective in that given moment.
Well, I think too, it's from if you're an outsider looking in, not everybody's receptive to that information.
It's
So
true.
it's just kind of like um, the bystander approach or whatnot. If you see somebody getting mugged or something, are you going to intervene or are you going to walk away? You know, and
Right.
so if you, or let me not say mugged, but it's kind of more used with like domestic violence encounters. If you see a man, you know, hitting, or a couple interacting with each other physically, are you going to approach them? And if you do approach them and say, hey, you don't have to put up with this, are they going to go back to the person? You know what I mean? And so it's
Right.
just like, is my effort for nothing? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that because nobody wants to be labeled as crazy, even like if I came to you and said, hey, Sid, you know, you kind of seem like a little off lately. Is everything okay? And you're just like, everything is fine with me. I'm just stressed out at work. And everything is fine. Okay. You know, like that's, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think that it's important to have those conversations, and it's also necessary to understand that everybody's not going to be receptive. I know one of my biggest things is rejection. I hate being rejected, right?
Same
Like
here.
who likes being rejected, but I really hate being rejected. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of things. But so it's just like, I don't want to go up to you with my heart on my sleeve, full intention on making your life better. You're going to be a great person after this because you're going to realize that you have some mental health issues. You need to talk to somebody about it. And then you shut me down. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so a lot of times we stop and say, oh, I see it, but I'm not going to say anything because they're not the type of person to be receptive. But I think that within ourselves, I think we owe it to them to at least try. They may
Mm-hmm.
not be receptive, but I believe that everything that we do is planting a seed. They may not get it right away. It may take 5 years and somebody else saying it, but then it'll be like, well, hey, they told me this 5 years ago too. Maybe there is
Mm-hmm.
something going on, you know? So I think that those are things that block us from acknowledging, but the stigma itself of who wants to be labeled as anything, and even it blocks us from approaching the person because we don't want to be the nosy person. We don't want to be the person all in somebody's business. We don't want to be the overreacher. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so just but I just think we owe it to each other to look out for each other in that sense, and just really not be angry if they're not receptive, but you know, just really go in with, you know, all full intention of being helpful. Whether they accept it or not, it's really, there's really nothing we can do. But that's where boundaries come into play though too, because
Mm-hmm.
if you're if I'm telling you that, you know, I see something and maybe you should talk to somebody, maybe you want to talk to somebody or anything like that, and you're like, nope, okay, well, I'm going to, you know, set up a boundary between us because your actions impact me in a certain way.
Right.
And so now I need to separate us a little bit, because
Yeah.
if you're not willing to change it, then, you know, I need to protect my mental health at all costs as well. So I think that just within the Black community, we want to be so independent, but we don't necessarily have all the tools.
Mm-hmm.
And pride gets in the way a lot with asking for help in those areas. And so it's just like, well, if somebody helped me, then I'm weak. That's not the truth. You know,
Yeah.
people help you because they care about you, and they
Mm-hmm.
want you to do better. So I think just there's so many things that are tied up into the reason that Blacks are not talking about mental health. Nobody wants their business on Front Street, and it's like, I'd rather I put my business out there than everybody is talking behind my back about my business anyway. I'd rather
Yeah.
you hear it from me, you know.
That's true.
So it's
That's
just, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it comes from a lot of the generational hurt as well. I mean, I can remember many times, growing up where, if I'm sad or if I'm crying or if I'm struggling, whatever, the first thing you hear is nothing's wrong with you. Nothing's wrong with you. It's like, okay, nothing's wrong with me. I'm good. And I think I always went into it with that same mindset. I think that's why it took me so long to even seek help, because it's like nothing's wrong with me. It's just a funk. It's just a funk. Well, once I get to Fresno State, I'll be fine, whatever. You always think, well, let me just get this little win and I'll be good. But then you get that little win and then you keep on, accomplishing more goals, and then you realize you're still in that same state, like nothing's really changed. I think that's one of the biggest, misnomers when it comes to mental health is people think, okay, well, people that are struggling with mental health issues are ones that are constantly failing in all, aspects of their life and things like that. Man, I've gotten countless promotions at work. I do this and that. I got married, have a child, all that stuff. Like on the outside, things are going great for me. My financial situation has, increased significantly over the past, several years. I've gotten better, money, finances wise and stuff as well, just managing money. But people had no clue the things that I was actually feeling, on the inside. Yes, great, I got a promotion and I'm maybe feeling myself in that little moment, but the first time adversity strikes, it's like, see, I don't know what they were thinking about promoting you, you can't
Mm-hmm.
do this and all this stuff. You can't go to school and work at the same time. The second that, school gets a little tough, no, this is the point of no return. It's all downhill from here. You might as well just drop the class.
Yeah.
Okay. And then before you know
Wasn't
it, you're
meant for
dropping
you.
out of the
You're
class.
not supposed to get a degree. You're just gonna work these jobs and then retire and then you'll be fine. You're not supposed to elevate from this point. Yeah. And I
Right.
think our minds put us on autopilot so often. One of
Mhm.
my mentors, she says that so often, and it is so true, just how you were saying, like, you're still getting promotions, you got married, you bought a house, you had a son, like, you're still living life, and on the outside it's like, wow, Sid is doing it, you know what I mean? But then on the inside it's just like, this isn't what it should feel like. And I think that we're able to live through the day to day because we're on autopilot. That's what we're supposed to do. You're supposed to go to work, you're supposed to earn a living, you're supposed to pay your bills, you're supposed to, you know what I mean, you're supposed to progress
Yeah.
in life. And so we often remove all of our feelings because we're on autopilot. I have to get this done. But that is so damaging because we're still falling apart while we're moving forward. So it's just like if I had a ball and I'm shooting it through space and pieces are just falling off, eventually there's nothing there. I've made it to the
Right.
moon, but there's nothing there. And
Hmm.
so it's so dangerous to just keep going, although you don't feel right,
Yeah.
because you're not whole when you get to that ending space.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like for years I was just living my life in neutral, even as things were constantly getting better and better. I always felt like I was living in neutral. Quite. I didn't quite feel. I didn't even really get to celebrate all those moments that were really just tremendous moments. I don't think I got to celebrate them the way they should have been celebrated.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like I didn't really get to enjoy that full honeymoon phase of my marriage, and that's unfortunate. But I feel like I wasn't seeking the help. And like you said, I feel like pieces were just constantly being taken away the whole time because I wasn't stepping away to build myself back up.
Mhm.
I was always thinking, okay, what do I need to do to get through this day? Um, my goals were kind of out the window because I know for me, what I tend to do is I think about not necessarily like the little victories in the journey. I think about how long the journey is. How far away am I from my goal? That's
Mhm.
so insurmountable. How am I going to be able to achieve that? I
Yeah.
always get to that point instead of thinking about, okay, well, you got to take one step first. Okay, now let's take two steps. Okay, let's take three steps. I
Yeah.
always just jump ahead to the biggest picture, and it's like I'm not there. I need to be there, and
Mhm.
that's done so much harm to me, because you get so afraid that now you don't want to take even one step. You don't make any progress toward it. So
Yeah.
that's definitely been a struggle for me, and I'm still working to overcome
Hmm. We are so alike.
that.
We are so alike. Like it's really it's the big goal or nothing.
Hmm.
Like, and it's like it's the big goal or nothing. Like, what have I done to this point? Nothing, because I'm not at the end goal. But in
Right.
reality, I have accomplished a lot,
Hmm.
but did I celebrate it? No, because my end goal is still over there.
Right.
It's not right here, so I can't celebrate yet. And I think that if we acknowledge those small victories in the process, that will kind of help build us up and provide encouragement. But we're so focused on, nope, I still don't have that degree in hand, so I've done nothing. But now I'm a year out. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So it's just
Right.
like that is an accomplishment. I took part-time. I was going to school part-time. I've been a parent this whole time I've gone back to get my degree. I've worked a full-time job the whole time. why am I not celebrating the end of
Right.
another semester? Why am I not celebrating passing my classes? Because I don't have my degree. Like,
Right.
so
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. It's like wake me up when it's May and I'm about to graduate in, 10 days. Like,
Yes.
but until then, I don't care about anything that I've done. I don't care about the adversity that I've gone through and overcome, all the perseverance. No, I'll worry about my perseverance when I finally reach that goal. And
Exactly.
then guess what? Once you get your degree, well, I need to get that job. I need to
Yes.
get that job. So it's a
Yes.
never ending cycle. It's always reaching for that next thing. And then you get there, and then now you're worried about the next one. So it's a very dangerous path, and something that we're both going through. So
For sure.
um, so I mean, let's talk therapy. I mean, you said you've gone to a couple, therapy sessions. I've gone to several now. I'm actively involved in it right now.
Mhm.
Um, Talk about some of the benefits that you've seen so far in your life and in your mood and things like that.
The first benefit is an unbiased opinion. I absolutely love. I've gone to two different therapists, um, and honestly, so the first time around, I happened to be going through some things at the same time that someone else in my workplace was going through some things, and we were just like, isn't there a program here that helps? And so, sure enough, our employee assistance program provides 8 counseling sessions a calendar year to us. So was able to take advantage of that, and um, just being able to talk with someone, and just being able to talk to someone for one and know that my information was not going to end up on the streets was so helpful. I think a lot of times we don't talk because we don't want other people to share our information. Go to therapy. They can't
Yeah,
share information. You know what I mean?
right.
So there, so but just being able to just talk freely and then receive feedback. I heard you mention this. How could you potentially work this out? How could you reframe this? How can you think about it this way? What happens if you think about it this way? Okay, you said you're unhappy with this. What have you tried to do to change that? Let's make a list of goals for you to try different things to change that. So just kind of just information that in the moment you don't think about. You're just like, oh, I should have thought about that. I should have made a
Mhm.
list. You know what I mean? But you're so focused on those little things once again that you can't even think of the simple things. And so it just builds into this big snowball of issues that then freezes solid and you can't break it open, So
Right.
it's just really, they're there to take apart the little pieces. Okay, you said this. Let's talk about this part. You said you have difficult relationships with these people. Let's talk about this. Why do you have, and so I think that was beneficial the first time. The second counselor or the second therapist that I went to, she was absolutely amazing. um she didn't really talk much, but honestly, that was okay.
Hmm.
And she's the one who really helps me to see the minute picture versus the big picture, and that kind of reframed my thoughts. But I mean, just from providing resources that I wouldn't have had access to or didn't really know to look for, they also provided both of those. And just additional information. I'm constantly researching. I'm just a nerd by nature, so I'm constantly reading new things. I'm constantly trying to learn new things, and so that was helpful for me to give me information to say, like, oh, well, this triggers this mood, or this can trigger, and just being able to identify triggers. I didn't even know what a trigger was until I started going to counseling. But okay, what's a trigger? A rough day at work, or when I ask my coworker to do something and they completely ignore me. That's a trigger for me. Okay,
Hmm.
how can that's going to happen. There's no way around that. But how can you make this not be a trigger? I don't know. How can I make this not be a trigger? But okay, well, let's talk this out. If you normally do it this way and they don't respond, maybe try delivering the message this way and see if that gets a different response. Maybe try delivering the message. So just that dialogue, um, is just helpful in
Hmm.
general. And it's just really freeing because you're listening to somebody who really knows nothing about the situation other than what you're telling them. But it's kind of like they can see the ins and outs of the conversation
Hmm.
from both sides. And they're able to give you, but well, maybe your coworker is thinking this. So
Hmm.
if they're thinking this, then do you see why they're responding that way? Oh, so I should approach them like this. So
Right.
in helping them, I'm helping myself. So that was really beneficial as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, I know therapy has been very beneficial for me. I think part of the reason people kind of refrain from therapy is not just the talking part, but I think there's the misconception that, okay, if you're going through any sort of treatment plan, you're going to have to be taking meds as well. But it's
yeah.
like that's not always the case. Like I know for me, for example, you can have the option to just go to, the actual psychologist therapy, or you can do a combination of that along with, a psychiatrist seeking medication, which is
Mhm.
what they recommend usually, a combination of both, not necessarily one or the other. Um, but you don't have to go down that route. So it's not, they're going to give you some sort of crazy pills that you have to take and all this stuff. Um, but it's been very beneficial. What I'm going through basically is a cognitive behavioral therapy. And one of the big things is that, we tend to get in our own heads and think that, hey, well, what we're thinking dictates our behavior. But it's almost like there have been many situations that I brought to my therapist, and she's like, okay, well, let's, let's swap that. Let's have your behaviors begin to dictate your thoughts. It's like, okay, just like how they talk about, smiling and things like that. Smiling affects your moods and things like that. It is very true. So, I mean, how can you get your behaviors to dictate what's going on in your head? And I think that was something I couldn't quite get through initially at the time, but it's like, okay, well, I can do some things. Yes, I'm feeling a way, but what can I do personally to, impact my thoughts? So
Yeah.
that's done wonders for me. She's made plenty of recommendations on things to do in my life. Be open, communicate. If you're having a negative thought, it's okay to have a negative thought. You can voice that negative thought with, someone that you trust and someone that you care about. You don't
Yeah.
have to hold on to it for fear of rejection. Going back to rejection, like we mentioned, that's something that I've always struggled with. So, I mean, there's situations I've gone through and things I've explained to my therapist, and she'll say, okay, well, why? How did you feel after that? Well, I felt X, Y, and Z. I felt rejected, or basically leading to rejection. And it's like, okay, well, let's deconstruct that. Let's go back to some things in your childhood. Let's go back through your life. How do you deal with rejection? What do you feel when you're rejected, and things like that? It's just ways that I've never deconstructed those feelings,
Yeah.
um, and things that I can't necessarily do by myself right now. So, um, it's done wonders for me, in that aspect. And I'd recommend, therapy for anyone that's interested. And I feel like you don't have to have a diagnosis to go through these things either. Sometimes maybe you do need a couple counseling sessions just to get back on track. Maybe some people need them regularly. Like I have mine regularly, pretty much, once every 2 weeks. But that's good for me right now.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, no, therapy has done just wonders. Man, yeah, it's done just a lot of wonders for me. So I've been super appreciative of it.
That's awesome. I love that. And I really appreciate this podcast in general. Just because for one, you're a male. For two, you're a black male, and just being honest about that, about your struggles with it, because I think that a lot of us have dealt with trauma. A lot of blacks have dealt with trauma. And with the research behind even just trauma being passed genetically down. So even though you may not have experienced it directly, that's not saying that you're not affected from a generation ago. You know what
Right.
I mean? And so just being mindful that we could all use therapy, to be quite
Hmm.
honest. You know what I mean? Some families have worked through that, and so they're able to then pass that on to their children and so forth. But not everybody has, and I think we need to be mindful of that as well, that we all need some type of just not correction, but we all need some type of guidance. And that's really the only way that we're going to overcome anything. And I think that as a people, if we talked about this more, we'd be in a different place than where we are right now.
Yeah. And, I appreciate that you mentioned, me as a Black man, kind of, driving this discussion. I don't want to spend too much time on this because this is a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is, a lot of us have seen the video, or we've seen enough, information about Ahmaud Arbery and that whole situation. I think what people don't understand is how that impacts our psyches, whether that's as a Black woman, whether that's as a Black man, whether that's a person in color in general. I think what people don't understand, and I posted this on Facebook a couple days ago when I first saw the video, it's like coming to terms with the reality that that could easily be me any day. That could be, I work in Clovis. What happens the next time that I'm, going on a walk during my break and someone thinks that I don't belong there? What happens? There's literally no telling. So I think we can all relate to these situations, and it hurts us so much. So people say, well, hey, that's a one-time situation, get over it. It's not that easy to get over it.
Right.
People don't understand the things that we do, especially I can obviously speak for Black men. People don't understand what we do on an everyday basis to protect ourselves. Like, if I'm walking down the street and I see a white woman, do I have to smile if I don't feel like smiling? Do I need to make myself appear like I'm not a threat? And when I do all this stuff and you still clutch your purse, or you still look at me funny, or you still give an awkward smile, how do you think that makes me feel? Like, it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter if I'm in a suit. Doesn't matter if I'm in my casual clothes. Doesn't matter how much money I have. You still look at me as this.
Yes.
Like, think about the impact that has on my mental health. Like, feeling like I can't actually, I messaged one of my friends. We kind of been going back and forth since the video posted. I told him, just imagine like the phrase, just be yourself all the time, or, always be yourself. That's like a common phrase that everyone can embrace and apply to their lives. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I have to be aware of where I'm at and how I'm going to conduct myself at that given time. And the thing is, it's just for self-preservation. It's not trying to suck up to anyone. It's not trying to do this, not trying to do that. It's just, I need to protect myself, like protect, my career, protect my finances, protect my life. Like, so that's not even going down the full rabbit hole. That's just a little bit of how I feel and the feelings that go through me when these situations continue to come up with Black men. But people don't understand that. And if they don't understand it, 9 times out of 10, they don't want to hear it. So that's, in a nutshell, that is, how it impacts our mental health and why these issues matter to us so much.
Yeah, that's real life. And so I think that just being open and honest about it, just, I'm sure there are a lot, you're not the only Black man who feels that way. You're not the only Black person who feels that way. You have mothers raising Black sons that are going into adulthood. You have mothers, pregnant with Black sons. Excuse me. Your wife has a Black son. You know what I mean? And so it's just like, yeah, that in itself is traumatic. And we see the videos and we don't see justice. And so it's just like, wow, but again, I think that's why we need to not only talk about it, but we need to have solidarity about it within the community. And not just within the community so we get it because we get it, we're in the community, but solidarity in the community because we need to reach other communities that don't get it. We need to get their solidarity on this, as far as who else has to wake up and be afraid of getting pulled over.
Right.
Who else? You know what I mean? And so there's a post that I made with all the hashtags of all the names that we've hashtagged over the years, and it's just like, wow, like, you can't play in the park. You can't walk home with Skittles. You can't, and so it's just like, of all the things. Like even as a Black woman, I tell my girls, if we're in the store, you're not putting your hands in and out of your pocket. You're not opening and closing your purse. Keep your hands out of your purse. The only time you get in your purse is when you get to the register to pay. Because if they see you going in and out, they may think you stole something. Like, I've been telling my kids that since they were like 9 years old. Why?
Right.
Because we're targets. Black people are targets so many times. And so it's just like, I'd rather you be aware of this than get caught up for doing nothing and something bad happens because of an assumption, you know? So keep your hands visible. Don't be touching on a whole bunch of stuff at the store. If you like it and you have a good intention on purchasing it, by all means, touch it, put it in your cart, hold on to it, whatever. Don't be going to the bathroom with stuff in your hands. Like all of those things where Black women are targeted for shoplifting and they're followed in stores and all of that stuff. They're asking you all these questions and, hey, do you need help with anything? You didn't ask anybody else if they needed help with anything. Why are you following me around the store asking if I need help with anything, you know?
Right.
So yeah, it's a much needed conversation because those things can be traumatic. You're telling this little kid who doesn't really understand why they have to do they have to do things this way when they see other kids running and touching stuff and moving stuff on the shelves and nobody's saying anything to them, but you're being watched by the employees. The security guard has come over to your area, you know? So that's traumatic in itself for a child.
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of things, a lot of conversations that, Black parents have to have that not all parents have to have with their children. I mean, I would advise that they do, but, not all of them have to have that conversation with the hope that this is going to save, their child's life, at some point down the road. I remember I couldn't have been more than 15 years old or so, probably more like 14. Went to the movies over at, Manchester Center. Where we were living was, maybe a couple blocks away. So we were walking, home from the movies, and a cop, makes a U-turn, pulls us over, all this stuff, has us sit on the curb and everything like that. In the moment, especially at that age, I didn't really think much about it, about being Black in America. Obviously, you knew that racism existed and stuff like that, but I was just like, oh, I am who I am. I'm not a threat. No one's worried about me. But the fact that they, pulled us over, asked us all these questions, well, where are you guys coming from? Where do you live? And all this stuff. It's just like, it took me a long time down the road to realize, like, I was racially profiled. Like, I wasn't even doing anything, and yet I'm, they're asking me all these questions and stuff. So just having those feelings and knowing that, anyone can go through those things. And who knows, if my dad didn't teach me all the proper things to say and do in those situations, what if, I reached into my pocket because I thought my phone was vibrating or something like that? Life could have been completely different. We wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Right.
So that's just stuff that weighs so heavy on us in the Black community. And I wish that people, not only, people of other races would acknowledge that and accept that. I'm not asking you to understand it because you can't walk a mile in our shoes. I get that. But just acknowledge that's how we feel. And this is where it comes from.
Yes.
But I think also just us amongst each other in the Black community realize we've got much larger threats out there. The petty stuff that we're dealing with, the petty stuff we're going back and forth about, it's not doing us any favors, in the long run. We're all going through some sort of trauma. Let's just acknowledge that and be like, you know what? We're both hurt, honestly. It may not be directly the reason why we're having this issue, but we both have our own hurt that we're going through. Let's just, shake hands and walk off. It is what it is. So that's what I'm kind of hoping this podcast will be able to do in a nutshell. Have these conversations that you and I are having that we don't normally have with anyone, putting it out to the masses. And hopefully people can reach out and, I don't care if they don't watch another episode of this podcast, that's fine. But if they take something from this and they can go, reach out to someone else and, spark the mind and the heart of someone else, I'm happy with that. I'm more than happy. So, I mean, that's what I want to do in a nutshell. It's not about me. It's not about me as a host. It's just this podcast, this platform, what it can do for our community.
Yes. And I commend you. I commend you heavily for that. It is so needed. And I am hopeful for the transformation that's going to take place in our community because of it. I know it's going to help somebody. And I mean, at the end of the day, if it helps one person, then, you know, you did what you came to do. But um, I'm grateful that you asked me to be on today.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Thank you again for joining. I guess as we wrap up, um, would there be something that you want to say to someone, whether they're suffering from mental health, whether they're kind of uncertain of what's going on in their lives right now? What would you say to those people?
Use your resources. You don't have to feel this way, especially if you don't always feel this way. Then you know it's something you would want to look into. If you go through highs and lows, I mean, we all have good things and bad things that happen in our lives, but how long are you staying down when one of those bad things happen? Are you affecting others when those bad things happen? Are you isolating yourself? What does your house look like? Is your house clean? If your house is not clean, you know, and you're normally a clean person, maybe that's a sign. I know that was a sign for me. Um, just be mindful. I mean, just really think about it. Don't wait for the earth to shatter to get help. There may not even be a diagnosis for you because you may not be on a spectrum of bipolarism or depression or anything like that, or anxiety, but go talk to somebody. You know, there's no harm in seeking advice, seeking help. Even though you may not even have a diagnosis, having somebody to talk to who can you can either bounce ideas off of, or they can give you a different perspective, is helpful. Um, but definitely use your resources. If you are concerned about your medical health coverage and you don't think that it'll cover your services, check through your job, check through to see if they have any programs that are available. I mentioned the employee assistance program at my job. um, I would have never known about that if my coworker wasn't going through something and researching that stuff. But employers want happy employees, so oftentimes they have programs and services that are available either at low or no cost. There are churches that have free services as well that you can look into. Um, I think overall, you just have to want it. Do you want to feel okay? And at the end of the day, if you feel that you are just not in a place that you want to be, seek help. Regardless of what that place is, seek help. If you're at a place where you're not satisfied, seek help, because
Hmm.
that could be an underlying issue. It could just be you need to work harder in your goals. It could be that you are dealing with depression. But if you're in a place in life where you do not like where you are, and you know that you can, or you want to do better but you can't seem to get there, seek help.
Yeah. Agree with you 100%. Seek help. I know your mind is telling you that you're alone. You're not. You're not alone. Uh, Remember that everything that's going through your head, it's in your head. It's not the reality. Um, Seek help. Seeking help is not weakness. That's actually showing strength. That you're willing to, bring the issues to the forefront, have a conversation, and fight the fight. Um, so yeah, seek help. Um, if obviously you ever think about taking your own life, there are various hotlines to assist you without having to call 911 and do all that crazy stuff. Utilize those hotline numbers. People love you, people care for you. um, Allow them that opportunity to be trusted and to be there for you. Don't don't just have in your head that they're not there for you. Don't make up those decisions for them. Utilize those people. They're there for you. um, Pray about it. Pray about it. There were many times in my life where I felt like God wasn't there for me. Why are you sending me through this stuff? But pray on it. There's light at the end of the tunnel. And maybe what you're going through is you're going through it to have a voice for the next person, to help potentially save someone else's life. So um, take advantage of that. God's bringing you through this for a reason. Don't be ashamed of it. All right. Well, again, Kia, thank you for being on. I appreciate it. This is just a fantastic episode. Um, Guys, we are on YouTube for the video version. Check us out on YouTube, Straight Out of Fresno podcast. We are on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. Check us out there. Follow us on Facebook, Straight Out of Fresno Podcast, and then also on Instagram at Straight Out of Fresno Pod, I believe. Don't quote me on that. Actually, I think it may just be Straight Out of Fresno. I need to get my handle right. All right. Well, again, Kia, thank you, and
Thank you for
until next time.
having me.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. All right. Until next time, guys. Peace.